Growing up in the 70s and 80s, I loved to see the Harlem Globetrotters, whether it was on Wide World of Sports or one of their Saturday morning TV shows. Now in this video, let's take a look back to one of their series which took the super basketball players and made them actual superheroes. It was a short-lived animated series named the Super Globetrotters. It only lasted 13 episodes for one season on NBC in 1979. Now, if you hadn't heard of the Harlem Globetrotters, which I can't believe you haven't, but if you hadn't, they are the greatest basketball team of all time. They only play for entertainment, basically, and they're not really a professional team. But it always left me wondering, could the best team of the Globetrotters ever assembled from, say, like back in the 70s or 80s, could they have beaten Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in the 1990s? I just always wondered that. But I digress. The Globetrotters had been the stars of Saturday morning shows twice before the Super Globetrotters had appeared. They had one show that ran from 1970 to 1973. Now, these Globetrotters also guest starred on the new Scooby-Doo movies 3 times in the early 70s. Then, in 1974, they did a live-action Saturday morning variety show called The Popcorn Machine, which they actually appeared in. Which makes me wonder why the Globetrotters didn't do their own voice work in their animated series as well. Now, most of the Super Globetrotters' superpowers and names were basically taken from the 1966 Hanna Barbera superhero group, the Impossibles. Liquid Man, aka Fluid Man on the Impossibles, Multi-Man and Spaghetti Man, who is basically the Impossibles' Coil Man. In addition, the team included Gizmo and Super Sphere. Now, Liquid Man could turn into water. The float he wears around his waist is kind of ridiculous, I'll admit, but silly is what they were going for, I guess. Now, he was also sometimes called Fluid Man and even Aquaman. Super Sphere was probably the best and most original character. He could basically act like a real-life super basketball. Spaghetti Man had the power to extend his body and act like a rope or a ladder. Gizmo could pull any kind of gadget out of his huge afro, which is a pretty neat trick. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Captain Caveman's ability, to pull anything out of his hair. Now, Multi-Man could clone himself, which is kind of cool. The Crime Globe was a basketball-shaped satellite that would update the Globetrotters on criminal activity, and he'd help with strategies, like tell them to put on your superhero costumes and use your powers here or there, whatever. The Globetrotters members included Nate Branch, Curly Neal, Twiggy Sanders, Sweet Lou Dunbar, and Geese Osby. Now, 2 of my favorite Globetrotters in real life was Curly Neal, who got his name from Curly of the Three Stooges, and Geese Osby. But unfortunately, as I mentioned before, none of the real Globetrotters were on board to do their own voices. But that being said, the show did have some great voice talents, including Hong Kong Phooey's Scatman Crothers, who voiced Nate Branch, and Scooby-Doo's Frank Welker, who did the voice of the Crime Globe.
Over 50 tons of oil.
50 tons? Now that's heavy.
Right on.
I recently rewatched the whole series, and I'm not saying it wasn't fun, but boy, is it ever repetitive. Now, each episode, the Globetrotters face a supervillain, and they wind up playing this villain for the fate of the world, or something like that, and they always lose the first half of the game, before the Crime Globe reminds them that they are indeed superheroes, to which they transform in their lockers to the superhero versions of themselves and win the game. I get that they're basketball players, and they wanted them to get a basketball game in every episode, but did they really have to use the game to stop every criminal? I mean, I would have loved to see them use their basketball skills in a fight scenario somehow. Maybe throw basketballs at the bad guys, hit them in the head or something. But then, of course, it was the 70s, and they had all these dumb rules about cartoon violence. And another thing, there was the fact that once they go on a roll sometimes, and during a game, they would just stand there and shoot the ball over and over again without the other team getting the ball back, like they would in a normal game. They would just sometimes they would just keep shooting or hover over the goal and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, and the score would just keep getting bigger and bigger, Well, it was a kid's show, but still. Despite my complaints, I'm glad to have the Super Globetrotters in my collection of Saturday morning cartoon shows because it is a very super nostalgic series. It reminds me of all the wonderful memories I have of the real Globetrotters. Now, if they would just put the other two Globetrotter series on DVD, I'd be really happy. So what do you think? Share your Globetrotter and Saturday morning memories in the comments below. And I have a favor to ask y'all out there in YouTube land. You know, besides classic TV, me being TV crazy man, I love comic books and cartoons. So y'all know I have a growing list of my own cartoon characters, and recently I decided to try and upgrade my Kung Fu Cat character. Well, take a look at my new design here and let me know what y'all think in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. I'm planning on giving Claw, the Kung Fu Cat, his own book. He's been featured in my Caveman comics books, which are at Amazon right now. I need your opinions to help me make Claw a household name and a character kids can have fun reading and watching. Don't forget that bell, because if you don't hit the bell, you might miss something in the future, and that might ruin your day and mine. Thanks for watching. That's all, folks.